The modern masses. From modern to postmodern mass. Sloterdijk describes the modern mass with Canetti's words, "Suddenly it's all black of people." This was a recurring experience in the modern era, where the mass regularly gathered on the streets and made their voices heard. Sloterdijk connects, for example, the totalitarian movements during the early 1900s to the modern mass. Particularly clear and well directed, he believes that this desire to be part of the mass was manifested in the Third Reich. He sees both modern nationalism and modern socialism as mass movements. While he believes that at that stage the mass was still capable of mass hero worship to admire people who they saw as higher or nobler, or just that they saw something higher and nobler in the act. Obama, for instance, is just a mere parental projection, and a emotional psychological projection manifested itself in combination of ethnomasochism, guilt, deconstructionalism, and cultural Marxism. Anyhow, but in the rich world, this belongs to the past, says Sloterdijk. The mass still makes itself physically reminded in the developed countries and districts, but in the postmodern societies, the mass is no longer physical nor natural. It was long ago things other than political and small subcultures swept by and devastated major Swedish cities, for an example. But the mass is maintained. It has just changed its guise. Sloterdijk touch upon the media community, where the individual is still part of a collective, but a collective group that now lacks the old feeling of power, might, and community spirit, solidarity, and affinity. It lacks metagenetics and is thus unorganic. The postmodern masses is mass without potential, a sum of micro-anarchism and exclusive units, which barely longer can remember the time when it was stimulated and full of self-confidence of its spokesman and secretary-general, wanted and would make history as a collective, who strived for greatness together, and they united under something great, noble, and high, and it wasn't against their will, because it was in line with what is organic to man and the individual. It worked in favor of reproduction, self-preservation, limited fear, limited dissatisfactions, advanced their group, and it meant struggling to find a stable model for the continuation of all mentioned. Which means we are codependent on others, and they on you, and each other's genuine success. A group for neuropsychologically purposes naturally is excluding. The postmodern mass is also not characterized by the leadership principles, says Sloterdijk, but has been replaced by program principle. It has taken its place, and this postmodern mass easily manipulated by the media and market interests, because the program's principle is only aimed to entertainment. All in all, it's an interesting little book that Sloterdijk has written, filled with valuable insights into the late modern mass media and society. At the same time, be aware that his language is heavy, and that there are other books that more directly address this burning issue of our time, such as The New Culture, New Right, and so on. The mass man has become the cultural norm, and he tries to conquer the world where you are supposed to be a replica, supposed to conform. We've seen this before when the church and the clergy, together with its most easily manipulated subjects, the emotional and self-righteous fundamentalists, went after the heathens for believing that the world isn't flat, or for working with herbs to create medicine, while other religious individuals went along to go along, and indirectly joined in the crusade, shown by their acceptance, excuse, and apathy. The aim today is global conformity, and the mass man comes in many shapes and sizes, and wear different styles of clothing, belonging to one of the dozen types of popular and trendy groups market interests has created for us. Under that charade, they're all of the same. They just dress themselves and some of their thoughts differently. The mass man is the product of modernism. Unconsciously, he is a product of many conscious forces, like for instance cultural Marxism and critical theory. He is the global consumer, an empty track through which gadgets can pass quickly, so there is always space for more. The mass man has no purpose and no final end intrinsic to himself. He is a tool to sell false material needs, which lack quality and spiritual quality, long-lasting psychic profit. They are just small injections of false satisfactions, which in the long run turns out to be dissatisfactions. To get rid of the dissatisfactions, you add to the mountain of dissatisfactions by injecting another shot of consuming a product and feeling good about it, for the moment. That short, quick urge for something, and in the lack of roots, identity, and direction, you've taken what's given to you in lack of what you actually need, but don't realize, and never will realize, because of the distraction of products marketed to you as being what you truly need. And the worst part is, you will believe it. Give me the right strategy and tools, and I can manipulate you into believing you've actually made a choice on your own, when in fact, I made you do it. It's easier than you might think. The masked man thinks of himself as aware and open-minded, when what he really is ignorant of what's going on around him, of what truly is. He is built around a few abstractions. He is a standardized man, emptied of his own history. No race, no nation, no culture, no community. A product of the lowest common denominator. And he's been made to think of himself as being unique, or perhaps even rebellious and enlightened, while what he really is the authority. He fails to understand that he isn't the rebellious one. The cultural revisionist would be the rebellious one. The real cultural conservatives would be him and his beliefs, because they are the ones currently implemented. They are the beliefs and opinions that currently are more accepted and viewed as the norm than any cultural revisionism I've ever encountered. He cannot call traditionalist beliefs conservatism, because what is there left to conserve? It's already lost, hence revisionism instead, if anything. A revolver, a return to tradition. He is the true conservative, the modern man, or at least cultural conservative, because he wants to keep status quo. He wants his belief to remain in power, and if they won't remain in power, he'll excuse force and the initiation of violence, hypocritically of course, to keep them in power and people who threaten it away. This while the state gladly helps him out and corporations created him, fund him and his ideas, and profit from it. He is authority. This is true even for some, if not most, historically unaware anarchists. The masked man is from a common mold of a trivial man who goes from distraction to distraction, who falls prey to absurd fashions, a society dominated by masked men, overtaken by masked psychology, with no moral courage but venal conformism. Not thinkers, but unconscious believers. Emotional thinkers, not rational thinkers. The mass society of masked men crushes everything that is different, continuously lowers standards, with mediocrity as the great equalizer. A society that hates everything that is excellent and qualified. We are supposed to be parts of a cogwheel that doesn't serve our own cause and existence, but in fact works against it. The citizens are kept happy and motivated by a mixture of food and entertainment, eating and laughing themselves towards the edge of the cliff, and in their conformity, socialization, autosuggestion, and current comfort won't turn their eyes away from what's distracting them. This would be true in an anarchist society as well. There's little difference when we've already been conformed. The mass mediocratic culture is trivial, shallow, and narcissistic. How long are the makers, the producers, supposed to keep the quality of societies alive, when leechers are being elevated to the maker's level, whilst the makers get degraded, all in the name of equality? How long will a castle built on pedestals of sand stand? How long will lies be believed to be truth, and how can it, when the inevitable eventually will happen? Those who are immersed in it will eventually break down, when their sources of narcissistic supplies dry up, when they grow old, when their money or drugs run out, when they wake up all alone, in Islam, Africa, or Soviet Union, or Mexico.